The big metal doors of the Galactic Council meeting room slammed open with a loud bang, Commander. Wujin walked in fast, his boots making sharp sounds on the shiny floor. His face looked worried and scared. The other aliens in the room turned to look at him, their many different eyes all focused on the human officer who was breathing. Hard Captain Haijin was the first to speak. Her blue skin turned a darker shade, which meant she was not happy. "What news do you bring, Commander Wujin?" she asked. Her voice sounded cold and angry. The room became very quiet. Everyone knew that when Captain Haijin used that tone, something bad was about to happen. Wujin stood at the front of the room and looked at all the different alien faces staring at him. There were creatures with tentacles for arms, others with 4 eyes, some with skin that changed colors like rainbows. All of them were part of the Galactic Council. All of them were waiting to hear what he had to say. "The human prisoner we captured 3 days ago," he said slowly. "He was supposed to just watch the Vorthak beast while our scientists studied it. But something has gone wrong, very wrong." Dr. Sujin leaned forward in her chair. Her green tentacles moved nervously. "What do you mean, something has gone wrong?" she asked. "Is the human dead? Did the beast escape?" Her voice got higher with each question. Wujin shook his head. "No, the human is alive. The beast is still in the containment chamber, but what happened is something no one expected." He paused and looked around the room again. "The human and the Vorthak beast, they are not fighting." The room exploded with noise. Everyone started talking at once. Some aliens made angry hissing sounds, others clicked their claws on the table. A few started changing colors rapidly, which meant they were very upset or scared. "Silence!" Captain Haijin shouted and slammed her hand on the metal table. The sound rang through the room like a bell. Everyone stopped talking and looked at her again. "Tell us everything that happened, Commander. Start from the beginning." Wujin took a deep breath. 3 days ago, we captured a Vorthak beast from the Outer Rim. The creature was 12 feet tall with claws as sharp as our best weapons. Its teeth could cut through starship metal like paper. Everyone in the room already knew this, but he continued anyway. "We needed someone to watch the beast while Dr. Sujin and her team studied its biology. The job was dangerous, very dangerous. 6 of our best guards had already been hurt trying to move the creature from the transport ship to the holding cell. Beast was so violent that we had to use heavy sleep drugs to keep it calm. Even then, it would wake up and try to attack anything that moved. We built special containment fields around its cell, 3 layers of energy barriers that could stop a plasma cannon." Dr. Byumseok interrupted him. "Why did you choose a human for this job?" he asked. "Humans are small and weak compared to a Vorthak beast. It makes no sense." Wugin nodded. "I thought the same thing, but the human volunteer, his name is Do-yoon, said something that made me think. He said that humans on Earth had experience with dangerous animals. He said they knew how to handle creatures that could kill them." Captain Haijin made a sound that meant she was not convinced. "One human against a Vorthak beast," she said. "That sounds like a death sentence." "What made you think this was a good idea?" The human seemed confident. Wujin replied. He did not look scared when he saw the beast. He asked for basic monitoring equipment and a simple chair, nothing else. No weapons, no protective gear. Just a chair and some recording devices. Many of the aliens in the room shook their heads or made disapproving sounds. The Vorthak beasts were known throughout the galaxy as the most dangerous predators alive. They had destroyed entire space stations, killed thousands of people, and never showed mercy to any living. Fingunji, who was sitting in the back row, raised her hand. "What happened when you put the human in the chamber with the beast?" she asked. "Did it attack right away?" Wujin looked at her and his expression became even more strange. "That is the part that no one will believe," he said. "The beast did not attack." The human sat down in his chair and started talking to the creature in a soft voice. The room became very quiet again. Everyone was listening carefully. The beast had been sleeping because of the drugs, but it started to wake up when the human entered the chamber. Its 6 blue eyes opened slowly. We all thought we were about to watch the human die. We had medical teams ready and weapons pointed at the containment field, but when the beast saw the human, something unexpected happened. Instead of roaring and attacking, like it always did before, the creature made a quiet, questioning sound. It tilted its head to one side like it was confused or curious. Dr. Sujin leaned forward more. "What did the human do?" she asked. The human just kept talking in that same soft voice. Wujin said he did not move from his chair. He did not try to run away or call for help. He just sat there and spoke to the beast like it was a normal animal. The beast moved closer to the human, but not in an attacking way. It moved slowly, carefully. Like it was trying to understand what the human was. The creature settled down on the floor near the human's chair and just watched. Captain Hyjin stood up from her chair. "This is impossible," she said. "Vorthak beasts do not act this way. They kill. Everything they see, they have no other instincts." Wujin nodded. "I know it sounds impossible, but I have video recordings of everything that happened. The human stayed in the chamber for 8 hours on the first day. By the end of that time, the beast was lying down next to his chair like a giant pet." The room erupted in noise again, but this time it was different. The aliens were not angry. They were confused and maybe a little scared. Something that challenged everything they knew about the universe was happening. Dr. Minyuk, who had been quiet during the whole meeting, finally spoke up. "Where is this human now?" he asked. "Is he still with the beast?" "Yes," Wujin replied. "He has been with the creature for 3 days now. The beast will not eat unless the human is present. It makes distress sounds when he leaves the chamber for breaks. The two of them seem to have formed some kind of bond. This is dangerous," Captain Hyjin said. "We do not understand what is happening if the beast decides to attack. The human will have no defense." But Wujin shook his head. "I do not think the beast wants to attack anymore," he said. "Yesterday, I watched the human offer the creature some food. The beast took it gently from his hand. No claws, no teeth, just careful movements like it was afraid of hurting him." The meeting continued for 2 more hours as the council tried to understand what was happening. They had never seen anything like this before. A human had somehow made friends with the most feared predator in the galaxy, and no one knew how or why. As the meeting ended, Captain Hyjin made a decision. "We will continue to monitor this situation," she said. "But we need to understand what is happening between the human and the beast. This could change everything. We know about both species." The aliens left the meeting room one by one, all of them thinking about what they had heard. A human had done something that seemed impossible, and the whole galaxy might never be the same again. Dr. Sujin stared at her computer screen for the 10th time that morning. The numbers on her instruments made no sense at all. The Vorthak beast that had been captured 3 days ago was showing readings that should have been impossible for its species. The creature's stress levels were lower than she had ever seen in any Vorthak, even the dead ones they had studied before. She turned to her colleague, Dr. Byung-seok, who was working at the next table over. "Look at these readings," she said, pointing at her screen. "The beast's heart rate is almost normal. Its brain activity shows patterns that look like contentment, maybe even happiness." Dr. Byung-seok walked over and looked at the screen. His 4 eyes moved back and forth as he read the data. "This cannot be right," he said. "Your equipment must be broken. No Vorthak beast has ever shown these kinds of readings. They are killing machines, not pets." But Dr. Sujin had checked her equipment 5 times already. Everything was working perfectly. The readings were real, and they were showing something that challenged everything the galaxy knew about these dangerous creatures down in the containment chamber. Do-yeon was starting his morning routine with the massive beast. He had been doing the same things every day since he first entered the chamber, and it seemed to calm the creature down even more each time. "Good morning, buddy," he said in his soft voice as he sat down in his chair. The beast, which he had started calling Buddy, in his head lifted its huge head and looked at him with those 6 glowing blue eyes. The creature made a low rumbling sound that almost sounded like a cat purring, but much deeper and louder. It pressed its massive head against the energy barrier that separated them. Its eyes had changed from the bright, angry blue they had been when it first arrived to a softer, warmer colored. Ohayan reached into his bag and pulled out some of the special food the scientists had prepared for the beast. "Here you go, big guy," he said, holding the food near the barrier. The creature took it gently, being very careful not to touch Do-yeon with its sharp claws. Captain Hyjin watched all of this from the observation deck above the chamber. She had been coming to watch every day since Commander Wujin had first reported the strange behavior. The sight still amazed her every time she saw the interaction between human and beast. She felt like she was looking at something that should not exist. The breakthrough came on the 4th day when Do-yeon noticed that something was different about the creature. It was not lying down peacefully like usual. Instead, it was pacing back and forth in its cell, making soft whimpering sounds that reminded Do-yeon of a dog that was upset about something. "Hey, what's wrong, buddy?" Do-yeon asked, standing up from his chair. The beast immediately came over to the barrier and pressed against it harder than ever before. Its eyes were glowing brighter, and it kept making those worried sounds. Do-hyun realized that the creature was trying to tell him something important. It was not just making random noises. The sounds had patterns, and the way the beast moved seemed like it was trying to communicate. He turned to the observation window, where he knew the scientists were watching. "I think something is wrong with the creature," he called out. "It seems distressed about something." Dr. Sujin activated the communication system. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Can you tell what is bothering it?" Do-hyun looked back at the massive beast, which was now pressing both of its front feet against the energy barrier. "I think it wants physical contact," he said. "I know that sounds crazy, but look at how it is acting." The scientists in the observation deck started talking among themselves. Physical contact with a Vorthak beast was against every safety protocol they had. The creature's claws could slice through metal, and its bite could crush bones, but the beast kept making those distress sounds, and Do-hyun kept insisting that it just wanted to be touched. Captain Haijin finally made a decision that shocked everyone in the room. "Lower the barrier just enough to allow limited contact," she ordered, "but keep weapons ready. If the beast attacks, we need to be able to stop it immediately." The energy barrier flickered, and a small gap appeared at the bottom, just big enough for Do-hyun to reach his hand through. The moment his fingers touched the creature's massive head, everything changed. The beast stopped making distress sounds, and its whole body seemed to relax. Its eyes dimmed to that soft blue color again, and it started making a deep purring sound that vibrated through the entire chamber. The creature was so happy that it rolled over on its side like a giant dog wanting its belly scratched. Dr. Sujin watched her instruments go crazy. The beast's brain activity showed patterns she had never seen before. Emotional responses that seemed to indicate joy, contentment, and something that looked almost like love. The creature was experiencing feelings that no one thought Vorthak beasts could have. Do-hyun continued to pet the massive creature, scratching behind what looked like ears on the sides of its head. The beast closed its eyes and made happy sounds. The human talked to in that same gentle voice, telling it that everything was okay and that it was a good creature. "This is incredible," Dr. Byung-seok whispered as he watched the scene below. The most dangerous predator in the galaxy was acting like a friendly pet. All because one human had shown it kindness instead of fear. Captain Haijin recorded everything that was happening. She knew that this footage would be studied by scientists across the galaxy for years to come. The bond between human and beast was unlike anything that had ever been documented before. The creature seemed to understand that Do-hyun cared about it and wanted to make him happy. When the human offered it food, the beast took it gently. When he spoke, the creature listened carefully, tilting its head like it was trying to understand every word. As the days passed, the bond between them grew stronger. The beast would become restless when Do-hyun left the chamber for breaks and would only eat when the human was present. It had started responding to its nickname Buddy and would make happy sounds whenever Do-hyun called it by name. Dr. Sujin realized that they were witnessing something that could change the entire galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be civilized. The creature that had been considered nothing more than a mindless killing machine was showing intelligence, emotions, and the ability to form meaningful relationships. The other aliens on the ship started coming to watch the daily interactions between human and beast. Some were scared, others were fascinated, but all of them knew they were seeing something special, something that proved that even the most feared creatures in the universe might have hidden depths that no one had ever bothered to look for. Word of the bonding spread throughout the galactic fleet, and scientists from other ships requested permission to study the phenomenon. The human who had volunteered for a simple monitoring job had accidentally become the key to understanding one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. As Do-hyun sat in his chair watching his unlikely friend sleep peacefully, he had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to change the course of galactic history. The bond he had formed with the Vorthak beast would soon become the foundation for a new understanding of interspecies relations and the beginning of a revolution in how civilized beings treated their former enemies. The news about the human and the Vorthak beast spread through the galactic fleet faster than anyone expected. Within hours, every ship in the area had received reports about the impossible bonding that was taking place. Scientists from dozens of Different species sent urgent requests to observe the phenomenon firsthand. Dr. Minyuk was one of the first to arrive at the main ship. He was famous throughout the galaxy for his research on predator behavior and had studied dangerous creatures from hundreds of different worlds. When he heard about what was happening with the Vorthak beast, he dropped everything and traveled across 3 star systems to see it with his own eyes. He brought with him the most advanced scanning equipment available, technology that could analyze brain activity down to the level of individual neurons. The machines were so sensitive they could detect emotional responses that the subjects themselves might not even be aware of. Captain Haijin met Dr. Minyuk at the airlock and escorted him directly to the observation deck above the containment chamber. What you are about to see will challenge everything you think you know about Vorthak beasts, she warned him as they walked down the corridor. When they arrived at the observation deck, Do-yun was already in the chamber with the creature. The beast was lying on its side while the human gently scratched its massive head. The creature was making those deep purring sounds that had become so familiar to the Dr. Minyuk set up his equipment and began running scans on both the human and the beast. What he saw on his screens made him question his own instruments. The Vorthak beast's brain was producing chemicals that were typically associated with parental bonding and offspring protection. This is impossible, he muttered as he adjusted his equipment and ran the scans again. The readings were the same. The creature was experiencing the same kind of emotional responses that parents felt when caring for their young, but there was something even more surprising. The beast's behavior patterns had completely changed from those of an adult predator to something that looked like a juvenile seeking guidance and approval from an adult. The massive creature that had terrorized star systems was acting like a baby that had found its parent. Dr. Sujin joined Dr. Minyuk at the scanning station. What are you seeing? She asked, looking at the complex readouts on his screens. The beast has imprinted on the human, he said slowly, like he could not believe his own words. It sees Do-yun as a parental figure. This explains why it has become so docile and eager to please. The behavioral specialist, who had arrived that morning, leaned over to look at the scans. I have seen this kind of imprinting in animals on my homeworld, she said. Young creatures who lose their parents will sometimes bond with the first caring adult they encounter. It triggers ancient genetic programming that helps them survive. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If the Vorthak beast had imprinted on Do-yun like a lost child finding a parent, then everything the galaxy believed about these creatures was wrong. They were not mindless killing machines. They were intelligent beings capable of forming emotional bonds. Dr. Minyuk continued his scans and discovered something even more remarkable. The creature's DNA contained dormant genetic sequences that appeared to be related to pack bonding and social behavior. These genes had been inactive for so long that most scientists did not even know they existed. It looks like Vorthak beasts are not naturally solitary predators, he announced to the group of scientists who had gathered around his equipment. They are actually pack animals whose social structures were disrupted at some point in their evolutionary history. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. If Vorthak beasts were supposed to be social creatures living in groups, then their legendary aggression might actually be the result of isolation and trauma. Creatures that were meant to live with others had been forced to survive alone for so long that they had forgotten how to form relationships. Captain Haijin realized that this discovery could change everything about how the galaxy dealt with Vorthak attacks. Instead of treating them as unstoppable monsters, maybe they could be helped. Maybe they could be taught to remember their social nature. The situation became even more urgent when new reports arrived from the outer rim. Vorthak attacks had increased significantly over the past week. 3 more space stations had been destroyed and dozens of ships had gone missing. The creatures seemed to be getting more aggressive and desperate. Commander Wujin brought the latest intelligence reports to the observation deck. The attacks are getting worse, he told Captain Haijin. Whatever is driving the Vorthak beast to violence is escalating. We need to understand what is happening, and we need to understand it fast. Dr. Minyuk looked down at the peaceful scene in the containment chamber where Do-yun was offering the creature some water. The beast drank carefully, making sure not to splash. The human with its massive tongue, the creature in that chamber, might be the key to ending the Vorthak attacks, he said. If we can understand how the bonding process works, we might be able to communicate with other members of the species. Maybe we can find a way to help them remember their social nature, but there was a problem. The beast showed signs of distress whenever Do-yun left the chamber for extended periods. Its emotional state was directly tied to the human's presence. If they tried to separate them, the creature might revert to its aggressive behavior. Dr. Sujin had been monitoring the creature's vital signs for days now, and she was worried about what might happen if the bond was broken. The beast had become completely dependent on Do-yun for emotional stability. Without the human, it might become even more dangerous than it had been before. Captain Haijin faced a difficult decision. The creature and the human had formed a relationship that was unprecedented in galactic history. But maintaining that relationship meant keeping a human in close contact with one of the most dangerous predators known to exist. The ethical implications were complicated too. Was it right to keep Do-yun with the creature when he had only volunteered for a simple monitoring job? And was it fair to the beast to make it dependent on a single individual for its emotional well-being? As the scientists continued their research and the reports of Vorthek attacks continued to arrive, one thing became clear: the bond between human and beast was more than just a scientific curiosity. It was possibly the only hope for preventing a war between the Vorthek species and the rest of the galaxy. The creature that everyone had feared might actually be the key to peace, but only if they could understand how to replicate the bonding process, and only if they could do it before the situation in the Outer Rim spiraled completely out of control. Dr. Minhyuk packed up his equipment with a sense of urgency. They had made an incredible discovery, but now they had to figure out how to use it to save lives. The peaceful scene in the containment chamber represented hope for the entire galaxy, but time was running out. The emergency message from the Galactic Council arrived at exactly 0800 hours ship time. Captain Haijin read it 3 times before she could believe what the Council was demanding. They wanted a full demonstration of the bond between the human and the Vorthek beast, and they wanted it within 24 hours. The message was signed by representatives from 12 different species, all of whom had been skeptical about the reports they had been receiving. Some of them thought the whole thing was an elaborate hoax. Others believed that the beast was just waiting for the right moment to attack. Dr. Sujin protested immediately when she heard about the Council's demands. "This is too dangerous," she said to Captain Haijin. "The creature has been stable for days, but we still do not fully understand what is happening. If we stress the bond too much, it could break." But Captain Haijin had no choice. The Council had made it clear that if they did not get their demonstration, they would order the beast to be destroyed immediately. Too many species were afraid of what might happen if the creature escaped, or if other Vorthek beasts learned to hide their true nature. The first test was scheduled for 1400 hours. They would introduce other humans to the chamber while Do-yun remained present. The goal was to see if the creature would accept other members of Do-yun's species, or if its bond was specific to just one individual. Dr. Byum-seok prepared the additional humans for the test. 3 volunteers from the crew had agreed to participate even though they knew the risks. The creature had been peaceful for days, but everyone remembered that it was still a Vorthek beast capable of killing them all in seconds. Dahayan sat in his usual chair talking softly to the creature. When the first volunteer entered the chamber, the beast immediately became alert. Its head lifted and its eyes began to glow brighter than they had in days. The reaction was immediate and telling. The creature moved to position itself between Do-yun and the newcomer. It did not attack, but it made low warning sounds that everyone in the observation deck could hear clearly. "Stay calm, everyone," Captain Haijin said over the communication system. "The creature is showing protective behavior, not aggressive behavior." The volunteers stopped moving and remained very still. The beast continued to watch the new human while staying close to Do-yun. When the volunteers slowly backed toward the exit, the creature relaxed slightly but did not return to its previous calm state. The second volunteer entered the chamber, and the same thing happened. The beast became protective and alert, positioning itself to guard Do-yun from what it perceived as a potential threat. The creature was not hostile toward the other humans, but it was clearly anxious about their presence. "This confirms the imprinting theory," Dr. Minhyuk said as he watched the interactions. "The creature sees Do-yun as its parent figure and views other humans as potential threats to that relationship. The first test was concluded successfully. The beast had remained calm enough to avoid any violence but had clearly shown that its bond was specific to Do-young alone. This was both reassuring and concerning. It meant the creature was not likely to attack randomly, but it also meant that the bonding process might not be easily replicated. The second test was scheduled for the next day, and it was the one that everyone was most worried about. They would attempt to separate Do-young from the creature for extended periods to see how the beast would react. Dr. Sujin monitored the creature's vital signs as Do-young prepared to leave the chamber for the first time in over a week. The beast seemed to sense that something was different. It became restless and started making questioning sounds. "It's okay, buddy," Do-young said gently. "I will be back soon just like always." But as he moved toward the exit, the creature became more agitated. The moment Do-young left the chamber, the beast began to pace frantically. Its distress was immediately obvious to everyone watching. The creature stopped eating and began making mournful sounds that echoed through the entire section of the ship. After 2 hours, the beast's behavior had become genuinely concerning. It was pressing against the containment barriers and making sounds that were heartbreaking to hear. The creature was clearly in emotional distress. Dr. Sujin watched her instruments with growing alarm. The beast's stress levels were climbing rapidly, and its brain activity showed patterns associated with severe anxiety and depression. "We need to bring Do-young back," she said to Captain Hygiene. "The creature cannot handle the separation. It's becoming dangerous to itself." But Captain Hygiene was under orders to continue the test for at least 6 hours. The council wanted to see how long the creature could maintain its stability without the human present by. The 4th hour, the beast had stopped moving. It lay in the center of the chamber, making soft whimpering sounds that reminded everyone of a lost child crying for its parents. The creature that had once been the galaxy's most feared predator was now showing vulnerability. That was almost impossible to watch. When Do-young finally returned to the chamber, the creature's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. It pressed against the barriers with such enthusiasm that the structural supports groaned under the pressure. The beast's joy was unmistakable and infectious. The final test was the most revealing of all. They introduced a small injured creature from another species to see how the Vorthak beast would react. Everyone expected the predatory instincts to take over, but what happened instead amazed them all. The small creature was a Zeltharian mouse equivalent that had been hurt during transport. It was placed in a secure container within the chamber. The beast approached the container carefully and began making soft, encouraging sounds under Do-young's gentle guidance. The creature showed remarkable care and gentleness toward the smaller animal. It used its massive claws to carefully open the container and then lay down beside it, providing warmth and protection. The beast even shared its food with the injured animal and seemed to understand that it needed to be very careful not to hurt something so small and fragile. The predator that had terrorized the galaxy was now acting as a caregiver. Dr. Minyuk recorded everything with amazement. "This completely overturns everything we thought we knew about Vorthak behavior," he said. "The creature is not just capable of bonding with Do-young, it can extend that protective behavior to other vulnerable beings." Captain Hygiene realized that the tests had proven something far more important than the council's original questions. The bond between human and beast was not just stable, it was transformative. The creature had not just become less dangerous, it had become actively caring and protective. The implications were staggering. If one Vorthak beast could learn to care for other beings, then maybe the entire species could be taught to channel their strength and intelligence toward protection rather than destruction. The test results were transmitted to the Galactic Council immediately, along with full video documentation of everything that had occurred. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The bond between Do-young and the creature was real, stable, and potentially revolutionary. But even as they celebrated this success, new reports were coming in from the Outer Rim. The Vorthak attacks were escalating, and time was running out to find a solution. The creature in the chamber might hold the key to peace, but only if they could figure out how to use what they had learned on a much larger scale. The tests had proven that the impossible was possible, but now came the even harder challenge of turning one miraculous relationship into a solution that could save the entire galaxy from an escalating war. Dr. Bionsik's research team had been working around the clock for 3 days straight, analyzing every strand of DNA they had collected from the Vorthak beast. The genetic sequencing equipment ran continuously, processing data that would normally take weeks to complete. The breakthrough came at 0347 hours when Dr. Bionsiak noticed something unusual in the genetic code hidden deep within the creature's DNA. Were sequences that had been dormant for what appeared to be thousands of years. These genes were related to pack bonding, social hierarchy, and cooperative behavior. This changes everything, he announced to his exhausted team as they gathered around his workstation. Look at these genetic markers. They are almost identical to the social bonding genes we see in highly cooperative species. Dr. Sujin joined the group and studied the data on the screen. What you are showing me suggests that Vorthak beasts were not always solitary predators, she said slowly. They evolved as pack animals with complex social structures. The implications were staggering. If the Vorthak beasts had once been social creatures living in organized groups, then their current behavior was not natural. It was the result of some catastrophic event that had disrupted their society and left them as isolated, traumatized individuals. Dr. Minyuk arrived at the research lab after receiving an urgent message about the discovery. When he saw the genetic analysis, his expression changed from curiosity to amazement. This explains why the beast bonded with Doyun so quickly, he said. The human accidentally triggered dormant genetic programming that the creature had been carrying for millennia. The caring, nurturing behavior that Doyun showed activated ancient instincts that had been suppressed by generations of forced isolation. Captain Haijin was called to the lab to review the findings. When she saw the evidence, she immediately understood the importance of what they had discovered. This is not just about one creature, she said. This could be the key to understanding the entire Vorthak species. The research team began working on a theory that would explain everything they had observed. The Vorthak beasts' legendary aggression was not their natural state. It was a trauma response that had been passed down through generations of creatures who had lost their ability to form social bonds. Sungji proposed that the species had suffered some kind of catastrophic event in their distant past, something that had destroyed their pack structures and left individuals scattered across the galaxy. Without their natural social framework, the creatures had become increasingly violent and desperate. The genetic evidence supported this theory. The dormant genes were still intact, which meant that the capacity for social bonding had never been lost. It had simply been suppressed by environmental factors and learned behaviors. Dr. Byumseok made another important discovery while analyzing the creature's brain. Scans: the neural pathways associated with aggression had been overdeveloped, while the pathways for social interaction had atrophied from disuse. This suggested that the creature's violent behavior was learned, not instinctive. If we can reactivate the social bonding genes in other Vorthak beasts, we might be able to help them remember their true nature. Dr. Sujin said as she reviewed the data. The creature bonded with Doyun because he showed it the kind of care and attention it needed to access its dormant social programming. The breakthrough led to an even more radical proposal. If one Vorthak beast could bond with a human, then other creatures might be able to form similar relationships with representatives from different species. The key was finding the right approach for each individual creature. Captain Haijin authorized an experimental program based on the research findings. They would attempt to capture additional Vorthak beasts and pair them with volunteers from various species. Each pairing would be carefully monitored to see if the bonding process could be replicated. The first volunteer was a Zeltharian engineer named Jisu, who had experience working with dangerous machinery. She had observed the interactions between Doyun and the beast and believed she could apply similar patience and care with another creature. The second volunteer was Minsu, a communications specialist from the Draknari fleet. He had spent years studying animal behavior and was confident that he could establish a bond with a Vorthak beast using techniques he had learned from studying pack animals on his homeworld. The capture of additional Vorthak beasts was carried out with extreme care. The creatures were sedated and transported using the same methods that had been successful with the first beast, but this time the scientists knew what they were looking for. Each new beast was placed in a separate containment chamber with a volunteer who had been trained in the bonding Techniques that Do-yun had developed. The volunteers were instructed to remain calm, speak softly, and offer food and water while showing no signs of fear or aggression. The results were mixed but encouraging. 2 of the 3 new beasts showed positive responses to their assigned volunteers within the first 24 hours. The third creature remained aggressive and unresponsive, but the scientists were not discouraged. Dr. Minyuk analyzed the differences between the creatures that responded well and the one that did not. The responsive beasts showed similar genetic patterns to the first creature, while the unresponsive one had suffered more severe neural damage from years of isolation. This suggests that not all Vorthak beasts can be helped in the same way. He explained to Captain Haijin some individuals may be too damaged by their experiences to recover their social nature, but many others can be reached if we use the right approach. The success of the bonding program attracted attention from across the galaxy. Scientists from dozens of species requested permission to study the process, and several governments began considering how this discovery might change their policies toward Vorthak encounters. Commander Wujin brought regular updates about the situation in the Outer Rim. The Vorthak attacks had not stopped, but they seemed to be following a pattern that suggested the creatures were searching for something rather than simply destroying everything in their path. What if they are looking for their missing pack members? Dr. Sujin suggested during one of the daily briefings. The attacks might be attempts to find others of their kind who have been captured or killed. This theory led to another breakthrough when the scientists analyzed the timing and locations of recent attacks. They discovered that the creatures seemed to be following the ships that had captured their companions. The beasts were not attacking randomly, they were trying to rescue their own kind. The bonded creatures in the containment chambers began showing signs of distress around the same time that attacks were reported in nearby sectors. Their emotional state seemed to be connected to the well-being of other Vorthak beasts in the Eridoyun noticed that his beast became restless and anxious whenever news of attacks arrived. The creature would pace in its chamber and make sounds that seemed almost like it was calling out to someone. I think it is trying to communicate with other members of its species, Do-yun told Dr. Sujin. Maybe we can use this connection to establish communication with the attacking creatures. The idea was radical, but it offered hope for ending the cycle of violence if the bonded creatures could serve as intermediaries between their species and the galactic community. It might be possible to negotiate a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Captain Haijin authorized the next phase of the experiment. They would attempt to use the bonded creatures as translators to establish communication with the attacking Vorthak beasts. The success of this plan would determine whether the galaxy moved toward peace or continued down the path toward all-out war. The breakthrough in understanding Vorthak genetics had opened possibilities that no one had imagined, but the real test would come when they tried to apply this knowledge to end the violence that had plagued the galaxy for so long. 6 months had passed since the first bonding between Do-yun and the Vorthak beast, and the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The interspecies rehabilitation program had grown from a desperate experiment into a thriving organization with facilities on dozens of worlds. Captain Haijin stood in the main observation deck of the flagship, watching as 12 different Vorthak beasts interacted peacefully with their bonded companions. Each creature had formed a unique relationship with a representative from a different species, proving that the capacity for friendship existed across all forms of intelligent life. The success rate had been remarkable. Out of 20 captured Vorthak beasts, 18 had successfully bonded with volunteers from various species. The 2 that could not be reached were cared for by the others, showing that even the most damaged individuals could find peace within a supportive community. Doyen's beast, now officially named Buddy, had become something of a celebrity throughout the galaxy. Visitors from hundreds of worlds came to observe the creature that had started the revolution in interspecies relations. The beast seemed to enjoy the attention and had developed what could only be described as a sense of humor. Dr. Sujin had published research papers that revolutionized the field of xenobiology. Her work on genetic memory and species trauma had opened new areas of study that were helping scientists understand dozens of other supposedly irredeemable species. The Vorthak attacks had stopped completely once the bonded creatures began serving as ambassadors between their species and the galactic community. The attacking beasts had not been trying to destroy civilization. They had been searching for their lost family members. Commander Wujin now served as the military liaison for the rehabilitation program, coordinating efforts to locate and safely capture isolated Vorthak beasts who were still living in the traumatized state that had made them so dangerous. The process of bonding had been refined and improved through months of careful study. Each species brought different strengths to the relationship with their Vorthak partners. The Zaltharians provided technological expertise, while the Draknari offered emotional support, and the humans contributed their remarkable ability to see potential in the most unlikely places. Dr. Minyuk established the Galactic Institute for Interspecies Understanding with funding from governments across the galaxy. The institute studied not just Vorthak beasts, but dozens of other species that had been written off as irredeemably violent or dangerous. The discoveries kept coming each month, brought new insights into the complex social structures that had once existed among the Vorthak people. The creatures were not just intelligent, they were highly creative and had developed art, music, and literature during their golden age. Before the great catastrophe, Buddy had learned to paint using special brushes designed for his massive claws. His artwork was displayed in galleries throughout the galaxy and had become a symbol of the transformation that was possible when beings chose understanding over fear. The creature had also learned to communicate using a complex system of sounds and gestures that Dr. Sujin had helped decode. Through this communication, they had learned the true history of the Vorthak species and the cosmic disaster that had scattered them across the galaxy. Thousands of years ago, a plague had swept through Vorthak society, killing the elders who maintained their social traditions and leaving the young to survive. Alone, without guidance, the species had spent millennia trying to remember who they were supposed to be. Bedoyun had been promoted to director of the Interspecies Bonding Institute, a position that allowed him to continue working with Buddy, while also overseeing the expansion of the program to other species. The human who had volunteered for a simple monitoring job had become one of the most important figures in galactic politics. Bond between human and beast had become a template for similar programs with other misunderstood species, the Shadowkin, who had been considered nothing more than space pirates, were discovered to be a nomadic people searching for a new home. The Void Stalkers, who attacked ships in deep space, were actually trying to warn other species about dangerous cosmic phenomena. Each success built on the last, creating a cascade of understanding that spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for centuries began reaching out to each other, seeking the kind of transformation that had made the Vorthak program so successful. Captain Hyjin had been promoted to admiral and put in charge of the new Peaceful Contact Initiative. Her fleet no longer carried weapons designed to destroy, but instead carried scientists, diplomats, and volunteers trained in the bonding techniques that had proven so effective. The galaxy was not perfect, and there were still conflicts and misunderstandings, but the fundamental approach to dealing with dangerous or hostile species had changed. Forever gone were the days when first contact meant preparing for war instead of looking for opportunities to build. Bridginji established training centers on 50 different worlds, where volunteers could learn the skills needed to work with traumatized species. The demand for these programs was so high that there were waiting lists on most worlds. Dr. Biomsiak continued his genetic research and had identified similar patterns of suppressed social bonding in dozens of other species. The work suggested that cooperation and friendship were far more common in the universe than anyone had previously believed. The transformation of the Vorthak beasts had ripple effects that continued to spread. One success story inspired another, and that one inspired 10 more. The galaxy was experiencing a renaissance of cooperation and understanding that had been made possible by one human's willingness to see good in the most unlikely place. As Doyan sat in the garden area of the rehabilitation center watching Buddy play with a group of young visitors from various species, he reflected on how much had changed. The creature that had once been feared throughout the galaxy now served as a teacher and friend to children who would grow up in a universe where former enemies could become family. The beast looked up at him with those gentle blue eyes that had once glowed with rage and confusion. Now they shone with contentment and love. The creature that everyone had written off as a monster had become a symbol of hope and proof that redemption was possible for anyone willing to accept it. The program had taught the galaxy that sometimes the most dangerous beings were simply the most hurt, and that healing was possible when someone cared enough to try. The bond between human and beast had become a testament to the power of patience, understanding, and the revolutionary idea that every being deserved a chance at a better life, the new beginning. The work of building bridges between species would continue for generations. But the foundation had been laid by one human who had chosen to see a frightened creature instead of a monster, and one beast who had remembered how to trust because someone had shown it unconditional love. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what everyone had hoped for.